Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Louella Fernandes, CEO of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Mike Reynolds and Shelley Seewald from Tungsten Automation. We'll be discussing content-aware printing in the AI-enabled workplace. This promises to be a really interesting conversation because we'll be getting perspectives from both Shelley, who's CIO, and from Mike, who's focused on product marketing and sales. So really looking forward to this conversation. And welcome to the show, Mike and Shelley.
Thank you for having us.
So before we dive into the conversation, if we could start with some introductions. Mike, could you go first and tell us a bit about your role at Tungsten Automation?
Sure. Thank you, Louella. My name's Mike Reynolds. I am with Tungsten Automation. I serve as the Senior Product Management Director for Print Automation. So basically, I manage the strategic direction of Printix, Control Suite, and other products within that product family.
I'm Shelley Seewald. I am the CIO at Tungsten. So I'm here to represent our customers because we often have CIOs in our conversations. We also use our products internally, so we can also, provide a lot of guidance on best practices that we've seen.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for joining me again. And as I mentioned, we're talking about content-aware printing and very much focused around the future of work. And actually, Quocirca recently published a Future of Work 2030 study looking at attitudes to printing and scanning, and also AI adoption in the future workplace. And one of the main findings we've seen consistently when we've been running this study is that many organizations are still very much reliant on printing. In fact, 18% of organizations said that they were fully digital. So only 18% are actually fully paperless. And I think that generally around 30% of processes are based on paper today. So what we're seeing is that print volumes are flat to declining, scan volumes are increasing. And Shelley, I was wondering really in terms of this reality that your customers are facing and what you've seen as your experience as a CIO, what would you say are the main focus areas for business leaders when they're looking at streamlining these paper-dependent workflows?
Yeah, I think it's important to start looking at the gaps. We kind of joke, we call it mind gaps. So it's the handoffs in process. So whether you're moving from the person to the tech or to the paper or any of those sorts, I think those gaps are where mistakes happen, delays happen, and I think where security risk kind of get injected into those areas. So I think one of the things to focus on is cleaning up those gaps. So either reducing the number of handoffs using automation, otherwise, just trying to eliminate them altogether. And then I think the other part is the visibility. So I think seeing like completely end to end is what really helps because, again, I think it's identifying how people work. And once you can look at people's behavior and you can see, either if you have any compliance concerns, you can look at security concerns, you can look at more ways to optimize your process and even some cost savings. So I think without the visibility, you kind of lose some of that perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because one thing that we sort of found in the study was that there was a big generational divide in terms of attitudes towards printing. And actually, we were seeing some of the younger generation not as dismissive of printing as perhaps we would think. And they were definitely looking for the high value and the real value benefits of printing. Where do you see, and again, from a CIO's perspective, this would be really interesting to understand. Are there any areas that you think that print and document services are really creating value rather than just adding an overhead? So not just driving cost issues, but there's actually driving efficiency as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up the younger generation. I was just thinking my daughter, she's a freshman in college. And we have a printer at home, and I think you just take print for granted. It's just there. We were joking in a different meeting about the Control P. It's right there, and it's super easy. She went to college, and printers aren't all readily available, or you have to go to a special room to print. And of course, she had homework she needed to print because that's still important. And she was just, flabbergasted that the printers weren't there. So I think it just kind of highlights this. You don't know how important it is until it's not there. I mean, that's like a more of a real world kind of example. I think we're seeing both with ourselves and our customers. From a business perspective, we're also seeing some really good returns on investment. So we've had Boston Children's Hospital and a few others where they're seeing, for example, $2 million in cost savings and 10% ROI. So again, really getting strategic value out of their print stack. We've also seen like schools reducing support tickets coming in. Obviously, when you have a lot of students and it's a little bit more diverse. So we saw a school reduce their ticket volume by 96%. So that really allowed them to just repurpose those hours towards more strategic value. So I think there is a lot of, hidden strategic intrinsic value that you can get out of optimizing what you're doing from a print standpoint. And like I said, it's just adding in that redundancy so that people don't have to think about print. Because like I said, it's kind of the unsung hero. You don't know how reliant you are until it's not there. So let's try to eliminate the option of it not being there by just making it more robust.
Yeah, and I think that sort of example you mentioned about All Saints Multi-Academy Trust was very much around cloud-first printing. Is that correct? And that's really what helps them reduce IT burden and reduce those support tickets. And one thing that we're seeing is this real momentum around cloud printing and how it really helps organizations drive those improved strategic outcomes, as you say, for the IT environment. So, really appreciate you sharing that customer example. In terms of the simplicity for users, and I guess talking a bit about trust and really how this cloud approach benefits organizations. Mike, could you talk a bit about the approach that Tungsten is taking with its hybrid cloud and sort of the Printix platform, and really how that provides reliability and scalability for larger enterprises?
Yeah, good question, Louella. So I see this, I see a few fundamentals that really need to be included in these types of solutions. So identity and content security is huge, but also flexibility around the cloud, private cloud technologies, and also hardware agnostic capabilities and capabilities to integrate with just about any system that's out there. So you really have to keep in mind what the legacy environment is, what the current environment is, and where they may end up going in the future as well. So that flexibility is key. Today's enterprises, like for example, in the cloud, they run across multiple hybrid infrastructures where you have elements of public cloud, all sorts of flavors of private cloud, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, even some private clouds with S3 APIs, all within the same organization. And they need something that could pull all of that together. And they're also managing mixed fleets of printers, MFDs, and you have all sorts of end user devices, whether it's Android, iOS, ARM processors, Macs, Windows. It's all over the place. So solutions need to target that type of world, and they need to target it with natively cloud-based interoperable platforms that are built on like containerized Docker Kubernetes architectures, which translates to uptime, scalability, and self-healing by design. And then you layer in security and content-aware intelligence, policies that can recognize data and automatically decide whether to print something, redact it, watermark it. And while you have all of that, you can't forget about your users. You need to make sure that the users basically it's a seamless experience. It stays, that complexity that you built in, it stays invisible to them. The experience should feel as if, like what Shell was saying earlier, it should be as simple as Control P. Secure, seamless, trusted, no matter where they're working at.
Yeah, I think you picked up on some very interesting points there, particularly the need to support sort of multi-cloud environments, but also that sort of mixed fleet, vendor agnostic approach as well, which Quocirca sees as really important because in our recent security study, looking at the security of the print environment, that was one of the top challenges for organizations that have this mixed fleet, trying to have a consistent approach around security for different devices, like you say, a patchwork of devices, software, firmware updates. And I'm curious because you mentioned around the aspect of managing this from, I guess, one single platform? But also, do you see, in terms of the capture element, has organizations moved to more of a less paper environment, that they need to kind of rebalance their environment to be more balanced between print and capture? Is that something you're seeing with your customers, Mike?
Yes, especially when they go into when they look into acquiring like MFD fleets or flipping MFD fleets. A lot of times that capture technology and even print management technology sometimes is baked into those transactions where, and I see this as a mistake. They bundle the print and scan management solutions into that hardware lease. And while it looks good on paper, like it's a great deal, it actually locks in critical workflow software that's to the specific equipment that they're purchasing at that time. And they could be locked in for 3 to 5 years. And it makes it more difficult to innovate, and you lose some flexibility, and it could cause problems later on down the road as environments change. The other common issue is investing in like point fixes, optimizing individual devices around a particular print problem, instead of taking a step back and optimizing the complete end-to-end process that could actually prevent those problems in the first place. And the real value comes from visibility in governments across the workflow, knowing where the frictions go, where the friction is at, the delays, content risk, and eliminating them. And that's where automation ROI, they truly scale. And if you actually apply AI to that, we bring in AI from the Tungsten Automation platform, namely Total Agility, you can identify friction points in a document workflow, surfacing patterns and risks that, the human eye may miss. And then you can take a generative AI action to remove those risk points. So that's how you shift from reactive fixes or point fixes to intelligent, proactive optimization. And you don't typically get that from applications that are baked into hardware lease agreements.
That's a really good point, because as you say, with MPS contracts, they're usually 3 to 5 years. And the way that the technology landscape is moving now, the software is changing more rapidly. And like you say, through AI adoption and the opportunity to use AI to optimize processes. So I guess with a platform like Tungsten Automation, it really helps to have that in place to future-proof those changes and not be tied in to the hardware-centric features around potential built-in capabilities that Tungsten can actually change as the technology infrastructure is changing.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, along with security, both on the individual and content level, that flexibility, the ability to quickly respond to market changes or anything else that's going on is critical.
Yeah, so Shelley, I'm really curious as to your perspective around cybersecurity, IT security, because again, our research, it's quite well acknowledged that security is a top area of IT investment. Organizations need to protect their endpoints, their software, their infrastructure. And often what we see is the print infrastructure is still quite overlooked. It's a big oversight when it comes to document and device security. In terms of your experience as a CIO, do you think organizations are complacent around security when it comes to the print environment? And also, how can they balance the security of print and capture without compromising end user productivity?
Good question. I do think it is often overlooked because I think, it's what can happen with paper or what can happen with scanning. So I think it just kind of is out of sight, out of mind. So I do think it's often overlooked. And I think people have a hard time envisioning, like, how could I secure an environment like that? Like, how do you secure down to a piece of paper? So I think it almost becomes too overwhelming. So I think they look at it like, how do I control people's behavior? And I think you need to look at it more from, it's less about the behavior and more, how do you embed security almost into the print infrastructure? And how do you then make it invisible? So that's when you're, I think, going to see the true value of it, is when you have really the enforcement is looking more at the context of the situation. So what is the identity of the user? What is the location? What is the device? Can you sense what the document sensitivity is? And then, start analyzing the behavior, but not relying on, changing someone's behavior, just how that they're using that. And I think there's multiple different ways you can do that. We've already talked about customers today. One of them, they used QR code scanning. So easy way to make sure that documents are only being picked up by the people who should be seeing that information. So it doesn't have to be burdensome. It can be very easy. We all run around with our badges and things to make it easy to pick up those. We also have the ability, again, to track end-to-end the process. And that visibility helps with the compliance, being able to see, hey, do we have a potential issue? Or, if you're seeing something happen more often, it highlights something that might have been invisible to you before. And so then I think it gives you an opportunity then to both react and then set up additional guardrails if you would need to when it comes to your end-to-end print environment.
Yeah, and that's great. And I think it leads quite nicely into the next question around content-aware printing as the turning point, and exactly what is content-aware printing in the context of Tungsten solutions. So, Mike, could you maybe provide a bit more detail around how that fits into the Tungsten solution? Because I think what we're seeing at the moment is that print security is very much about ensuring that documents don't fall into the wrong people's hands through user authentication and so on. But I think from what I understand, content-aware is more around the actual understanding of what's being printed and identifying whether those documents should actually be printed or not.
Yeah, so it can measure into real life in a lot of ways. You could do things such as search for particular words or things that look like account numbers, credit card numbers. You could also do like Boolean type of searches. You could also, applying some AI, look at the context of the content of the document as well. Are you talking about intellectual property? And the actions that you take on that document don't necessarily mean that you block the print every single time. Sometimes you need to look at this from more of a compliance angle. Maybe the person can print it. Maybe they are printing it to a safe location, but you need to have an audit trail of what information was in the content of that page and have that included in your reporting. So things like that are also key. It's not always a block a print, notify the CISO. We could do those things. We can redact. We can put watermarks on it. We could put microprint on there based upon all of that content. But sometimes it's merely just, you got to audit something because you had this particular type of content in there and you need to have that as a record for compliance risk later down the road. So it really opens up a whole universe of things.
And in terms of where you're actually seeing use case scenarios for this, which are the main sectors that customers are leveraging this type of technology in terms of content-aware printing?
It can be applied horizontally in multiple industries. You do see it primarily in like healthcare, for redacting patient IDs, watermarking printed forms or PHI stays compliant, or financial services, public sector or legal, and dynamically watermarking documents by classification level. But also there's companies like, for example, there's a UK food company. They had an issue where people were printing emails out of Microsoft Outlook. The subject line is not included in the header or the trailer of those print packets. So all they could see in their audit trails is somebody printed something from Microsoft Outlook, and they didn't have any other information about it. So what they did is, they're using our content-aware technology. They're able to identify this email subject line and any other buzzwords and include that in the audit trail. So now they have an auditable trail of all the emails that are printed. They could see the subject line and any other keywords. So now, they are able to see who's printing what emails and also have a record for compliance. And that was a UK food company. And think of how many other companies that are printing emails who knows what's in those emails? You know what's sent in emails. Sometimes it's stuff that you don't want to get out, or sometimes you want to keep track of. So that's an everyday experience that just about any company could use.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because with many organizations, when they're looking to protect documents, one of the reasons is for compliance and to meet, regulations, and particularly in highly regulated sectors. So it makes a lot of sense that they can understand more, not just only protecting the document, but actually protecting the information that's on there, and also doing that through identity access protection as well. So I think that's really interesting. And I think that's something that's very differentiated for Tungsten in the market from Quocirca's perspective, at least. Sort of going back to this kind of future of the workplace 2030, and the fact it is less paper, but it's still, as I said, many organizations are still reliant on paper to support their business processes. And there are really sort of two aspects, I guess, in terms of the end user experience and the IT experience. And so, Shelley, any thoughts on what you think, by 2030 that this future of work will look like, and also any actions for both users and IT and the overall enterprise going forward?
Yeah, I think if I could sum up, because I think we made a lot of great points while we were chatting. I think the less paper workforce of the future will be more effortless. So I think for the end user, it's going to be something that there's fewer interruptions, more uptime. So again, that kind of invisible Control P experience. I think it'll be faster. So I think, print speed is still a topic, and scan speed. And then I think that is going to free up more time when you're less worried about those efforts. It's going to free up more time to focus on other work. I think for IT, we've talked about like reducing the number of tickets that are coming in. I think when you have these end-to-end solutions, you have governance at scale. You're able to secure more readily. And then I think things can happen faster. If you have that one pane of glass and you have everything in an ecosystem, you can push through changes much faster than having to touch everything manual. So I do think there's a lot of benefit to the IT organization as well. And then for the full enterprise, and I think Mike hit on this a couple times, it was trust stays intact. So really, it's the compliance. We talked a little bit about it, but sustainability is also in there. How do you grow and do so in a responsible way is all, I think, part of just what we can do for the entire enterprise as we look at it as well. So it's not paperless per se, but it's frictionless.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's a great point around sustainability, because one thing that we've seen is that organizations, as they accelerate their digitization initiatives, much of that is driven by sustainability and the need to reduce paper usage and print volumes. And sustainability is a big driver for that. But I think also by modernizing the print infrastructure and using cloud-based print environments, that can also minimize the dependency on on-premise servers, which also means they can reduce their energy costs. And I do think that a platform such as Tungsten's, hybrid cloud environment can really help support those sustainability initiatives. Particularly, we're seeing that, in countries across Europe where they're sort of very focused on reducing environmental impact in particular. So I just wanted to finish really with a couple of questions around predictions for 2026, because we looked at this future of work 2030 and focused a lot on the purpose of the office, sustainability, the future of printing. And, we very much see that paper and printing isn't going to go away. But anything that you think will be particularly big in 2026?
Yes, I see capture and print software distancing itself more and more from that hardware transaction and becoming more of the IT infrastructure backbone for long-term strategy. I also see a lot of changes happening. There's already changes that happen, but happening even faster as information travels faster. Now with AI, things are happening faster. That's going to create more rapid changes within IT. So flexibility is going to be even more key. So options like, for example, we have a great API that works with iPaaS, or integration platform as a service for like Azure Logic Apps or Make.com or Boomi, being able to integrate our solutions into those iPaaS platforms gives organizations a lot of flexibility to navigate those changes in an enterprise level and also on departmental levels. And also being able to integrate in all those flavors of clouds and all those capture points. You have ARM processors being introduced at a very quick rate into the enterprise as well. So that introduces a new variable. And then you have WPP, Windows Protected Print, which is a variable of IPP, Internet Print Protocol. That needs to be folded in. So change, flexibility, I think all of that are big themes of 2026.
Yes, I totally agree. And in fact, we will be releasing our predictions for the industry next month. And the impact of Microsoft, I think, can't be sort of overstated in terms of the changes they've made to the printing subsystem. And as you say, WPP and the impact of AI PCs and ARM, which are creating some headaches, I think, around printing and making sure that's still as seamless on ARM devices as it is on non-ARM devices. So that's something that we definitely see as potentially having challenges.
I see the WPP as almost a culture clash, where you have a lot of OEM manufacturers that have just a ton of value that's baked in to the drivers and how they've done things. And then with WPP, IPP, there's going to be an exchange of security needs and being able to work without drivers. So people are taking sides of this, and I see it as one more derivative of print that we just need to work with and incorporate into those enterprises. And it's not about all or nothing on it, but incorporating it in and harmonizing it with the print environment.
Shelley, I'd be really interested in your views, as a CIO, in terms of what's keeping you awake at night around, things that potentially will have an impact on the IT environment. I guess not just print, but anything in particular that you think will be key in 2026 for you.
Yes, I think from the CIO perspective, it's, there is this ongoing push, I think, where we talk about AI and automation, or do more with less, and the, potential impact on people. So I think there's a lot of, well, if we automate or we use AI, will we need as many folks or that skill set? And I think really the difference is, I think these are all enablers. And I see like the automation and the print, and as Mike was talking about, the different technologies as ways to really enable people more. And really kind of helping CIOs with the argument of, well, how do we keep doing what we're doing? How do we automate? How do we use AI? How do we have this transition period? So I do think 2026 is going to be a technology transition period where you're going from hybrid environments to maybe full cloud, or you're going from POCs to full operational environments. And so I think, that keeps, I think, all CIOs up at night is, how do we get that done? What kind of vendors can help? So I think there's a lot of vendors that are new in these spaces, and they come with great stories. But, you have to, like, if I'm going to place my bets, I want to place it with somebody that I've worked with for a long time, that I can trust. I mean, that's one of the great things about using our own tools for Tungsten is we've been around for 40 years, and I know we'll be around for way more than 40 more. And so I'm, at least for me, it's easier to say I'm putting my faith and trust in what we're building to kind of help with that, again, that vision of how do we get from a hybrid POC to potentially like full in, and or again, how am I going to do more with less? And then how can I do that securely? So how do I have that pane of glass? Because security is going to become more difficult as things get more distributed. There's more vendors that are in the playground. You might be looking at, more AI and automations, more citizen developers. Not everybody's in the same location. Since, we had the pandemic. And so all of those things are factoring into really security becoming something that is going to be changing fast. And so I think having that full visibility is like another one that while we're losing sleep on, will at least give us a little bit of aid as we're going forward.
With AI, it's really a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because it's a great platform for productivity, but it's also can be harnessed as a security risk as well, and by cyber attackers. And I think we're seeing a bit of a perfect storm around AI, cybersecurity, cloud, and all these technologies coming together. So I think 2026 will be a really interesting year. And I love your point around, the fact that hybrid work is making us more distributed, which means more challenges around cybersecurity, but also it's helping drive productivity for many organizations. And print and capture are all part of that IT environment. So I really appreciate you taking the time today to share your different perspectives. It's been really interesting actually to hear what Tungsten is doing, particularly around security and content-aware printing and its views on how it will shape the future of the workplace moving towards 2030. So thanks so much for joining me again today.
Okay. Thank you for having me,
Louella.
So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. For more information, please go to quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.